Howdy, Cape Codders. My name's Stephen J.F. Scannell, and this show is called The Scannell Agenda. And the title of this show is called More Water Systems. Because the last two shows were about water systems and a national water project. So this is show number 25. So if anyone has trouble sleeping, highly recommend this show. Okay, so where was I? I was talking about a 2% food tax to go to the water systems. Well, probably any food tax would be better off spent on local farming projects, which include your water systems. Good composting systems and water systems. Now, a 40-foot diameter undersea pipe from Alaska to California would be a good water system, but I don't think a 2% food tax is going to pay for that. Maybe it could pay for part of that. Now, California's first strategy to prevent loss and depression, which we're 6 to 8 years away from a total depression in California, based on a crash of their agriculture based on drought, let's say, as a possible scenario. Not that I'm a prophesier or making a prophecy here, I'm not. But the handwriting's on the wall scientifically. So, number one, we got to tax all the water. We got to have green sanitation, and we got to have supports for green sanitation. We got to have massive public works water projects that use compressed air, water lifts, and we got to have a lot of water towers with windmills, hopefully. We've got to have expandable pipe panels. What's that? I don't even know what that is. Expandable pipe panel. That's something I should draw up. Sometimes if I draw, it's like an N with a star and then an X, and I square that off. That's a future project. I have to write that up. I don't even remember that one. Expandable pipe panel. So a Gulf Stream pipeline is one of the things that I've been drawing up over the years. Might be a second priority. Might give Texas and Georgia all the water that you want in these regions. But California to Alaska would be the same type of a deal. You could do a wide gauge tripe system that would run from Alaska through Canada and down through California and into Mexico. Let's not forget Mexico. By the way, I really am smitten with the presidential candidate Trump, because I'm a right-winger, and I loved it when he was getting mad. You know, bosses get mad. That's what they do. They get mad, and they blow up, and out of every orifice, they just bleed, and they have a breakdown. This is what bosses have done my whole life. This is just Trump the boss doing his boss machinations, you might say. I'm used to that. I like that. I've had that all my life. It's been very entertaining, to see bosses kind of have a fit. But I kind of like that. He's a money guy, but he's an activist, and he deserves some respect as an activist. And as such, I should think we all would want him to have some freedom to say what he wants to say. Now, as an amateur activist that he is, he's not really a professional political activist. He's more of a hotel financier and a moneymaker. But in his job as an amateur political activist, I think he deserves the respect. You shouldn't be going after his business if he says something wrong, if he's having a breakdown and every orifice in his body is blowing out and his steam, and he's just going haywire, because that's what bosses do. And I'm used to that, and I like that. So maybe we should have a Scannell Trump ticket, a Trump Scannell. Trump Scannell sounds better. And he's got money. He could fund some of these projects, at least to hire an artist to render some of these Rube Goldberg ideas. Some of these are very good, and I know they're good. But water systems will pay. I mean, and I'm sure, if Donald Trump had been in public life his whole life, as I was saying earlier on one of the other shows, if you've been in public life all your life and you see the system coming down the road, and it's a bundle of systems, it's a unified utility grid system. So it's got transportation, it's got utilities, and it's got energy, all in one. These are all the big money utility expenditures that we have. So you would say, if you were, unlike Donald Trump, if you had been in government service all your life, you might take a look at this and say, faint, or say, oh my God, this is it. We've been waiting for this TRIPE system or unified utility system. What's wrong with these people on Cape Cod that they couldn't see the light here? Well, maybe the people on Cape Cod don't think in terms of a California to Alaska wide gauge TRIPE system for tourist money, for water, for utilities. We've got other things. I mean, I've been a welfare bum since when? Actually, they threw me in Taunton, held without bail. And then I got out. My first job was driving a tractor-trailer truck. Then I was working at a boatyard. This is all very full-time. Then I was driving the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority buses. Then I was a personal care attendant. Then I worked at another boatyard. And then I said, okay, come on. You don't want to fix this, I'll go in the system, then you can fix it. But they didn't want to fix it. These are political people. They don't own up to problems. That's not what they do. So the diameter of any pumping system versus the pumping horsepower need, we can get some plumbers to talk about this, because pushing water through a 3/8 inch line, is a lot different than pushing water through a 24-inch water main. You've got the fluid dynamics, which is quite a science. So these undersea pipes are critical for California to get back up to being a real powerhouse as far as agriculture. I don't think they're as expensive over the long run as you might think. You might be overwhelmed and say, oh, this is too much, but you really got to put on the table what the costs of doing nothing are. For instance, forest fires and having a drought overtake your whole economy and smash it. That would be a cost, versus the cost of spending the money on an undersea Alaska to California pipeline. So Georgia to New Mexico pipeline or cross canal systems, 7 or 8 pipe, Brazil made, I don't know why that would be, filled with water. 7 or 8 pipe means some of the pipes I design are configured as a pipe bundle rather than one pipe, depending on where it's going to go and whether it needs support or not, or whether it's doing anything else or is it just a water pipe, etc. There are also systems I designed that can clean and filter the water while it is en route. So if you have a pipeline and you're shipping water for hundreds of miles or 1,000 miles, and you clean it up as you go. Here's a kick I was on. Sahara Sand Cargo Lift System. And this is a way to lift water and also to use your barges and your ships to carry water and or sand. These are bulk container vessels that would run between, let's say, the Amazon or Greenland, which is, that's where your water is, or Canada. And then they would run to the Sahara, or where you want water, where you can afford to buy the water, such as, United States. Because if these systems are for greening the earth, that's one thing that we all have to pitch in. But if they're for agriculture, then that has to be paid for. So you got to look at common water infrastructure expenses for the purposes of greening the earth and bailing us out of this worldwide phenomenon that we've gotten into here, global warming. Okay, here we have tripe at sea fresh and storm reservoir system. So these are, it's a map of Cape Cod, and you've got underwater tanks located from Plymouth, all outside Nauset, a couple or a few in Nantucket Sound, a couple or a few off of the Vineyard, off of New Bedford, and then major reservoirs, which would be located up toward Lakeville, and then along the line going toward the west. In other words, to capture the water temporarily, harvest the water, put it into reservoirs here on the Cape. The undersea is good for that for two reasons, probably more than two reasons, but the ease of pumping. If you pump down grade, your pumping is going to be a lot easier. And in the ocean, you can bag the water. You don't have to tank it. Bagging water is a lot cheaper than tanking it. Water system, forestry, sewage, farm, windmill, these are all different categories. Sometimes one of these systems that I draw up has to do with water system, forestry, sewage, farm, windmill. These are categories I write in. So wind to tree to ratchet. Oh, this is kind of a funny one, but when the wind blows and it blows the trees and there's a lot of force. This is a system that actually uses a tree's movement to actuate a small diaphragm pump. That's an oddball. That's what you call a Rube Goldberg style thing. I don't know how these things pop into my head. But that's wind power, moving a tree, actuating a little pump in between two trees, Because years ago they had something for boats that would capture the your pennant line, that is your mooring line, it would pull, and that would actuate a little pump. Pumped a little bit of water, kept your bilges water free. I haven't heard much about that, but the concept is workable, I know that. Water, but whether it's cost effective, you see, that's where it's, the rubber meets the road, because all these systems may work, or they could work, and they may, but is it cost effective? That's where the work comes in, not to just dream up idea after idea after idea after idea. Got to have people that have the ability to wade through some of this material, pick and choose what they're going to model up. So water system, sewage, aquaculture, boat, water storage, mooring. Here's a mooring that is part of an anchoring system for boats, but it's a helix water system, helix anchoring system that also doubles as a 5,000-gallon in the mud water storage device. Again, when you're pumping down, you're not even pumping sometimes, you're just draining downhill. So that's a reservoir on the downhill in the water, in the ocean. Water system and tripe, slow soak reservoirs. River on rails. Okay, water lifts from filtered sand-filtered inlets. Water lifts, filtered sand-filtered inlets. Pure power water is lifted by compressed air from tripe, which is wind and wave generated. So it's good to have reservoirs with a slow sand filtration soak. In other words, if you took water that was pretty good and you ran that water through like a natural system here in the Cape. If you sprinkled water that was pretty good, kind of passable but not really pure, and then you biofiltered that through the land, and you watered the forest here in the Cape, and then that water percolated down, and as it percolated down, it got cleaned up. That's what I'm talking about here, slow soak reservoirs. So you have a reservoir surrounded by a forest. You water the forest around the reservoir, and in turn, you've cleaned your water that goes into the reservoir. So that's cheap enough. Okay, here's something that should be kind of funny to most people. Water system, windmill, farm, and invention. This is a sling saddle for water hauling. It's a pack for goats to carry water. And you'd be surprised, but even people move water in third world countries where water is so scarce, you know. Here's a picture of a goat with a saddle, and then attached to the saddle is a little trailer, and that goat is carrying 6 gallons of water. So, I don't know. I hope nobody can see that. It's kind of funny. So these are the oddball things, you know. But sometimes something will work on a small scale, wouldn't work on a large scale. Well, maybe it would. Probably not. Here's a cheap rain event water storage in the extreme. And it has a reservoir or a little pond in a city. It's basically a kind of like where you'd have the swan boats in Boston. This would work. This is only for a city. So it would have airbags underneath of the water level, the water line, I call it, in a reservoir. So it would keep the reservoir water line the same. And then if you had a major rain event, you'd pump the air out of your bags or drain the air out of your bags, and then that would give you a lot more room for the water in the little reservoir, which would be in a city. It's about making a water park about 5 blocks, and you pump out the compressed air bladders into the tanks as the rain comes. You keep pumping the air out, and you're letting the water in. And these are air tubes that evacuate, make room for the water. So you blow air in an emergency for a flash flood, you could. Or your park raises real estate values. So water parks and how to manage a water park as a reservoir. That's a minor detail. You might think, well, all these are planning issues and ideas. My dad was chairman of the planning board. I don't even remember this because it was when I was very young. And I don't know if I'm retelling this story, but today I told the story about how Dad got a special town meeting together and 85 house lots. This is high ground overlooking the salt marsh in North Howard by the reservoir. They were taken for conservation, thanks to my dad. I probably told that story. I apologize. I really miss my dad and mom, and my brother Paul, and my sister Eileen. What a damn shame that is. Don't get into politics. They'll come after your family. Okay, back to water systems. Cone stock from Ethiopia. Oh, okay, this is a good one. This is using poor countries to build cisterns out of cane and vine, and then would kind of be an open cone. And what you'd do is you'd ship this stuff to where you needed a cistern, and then you'd plasticize all this nicely woven cane or what have you, and you'd build a cistern, but you'd also be empowering and employing the poor, let's say in a poor country, to weave this looks like a 3,000 gallon small cistern, probably for your runoff, etc. This is all stuff falls into water system. Here's a floating nuclear and desalinization plant. U.S. Navy plants. As I've mentioned earlier, I believe in the United States Navy owning every single nuclear plant in this country. So you'd have modular nuclear floating plant, which you could evacuate out a canal pretty quickly. With your nuclear plant, you could use power that you didn't need in reserve, and use that for taking brackish or salty water and desalinization of the water, and then pumping the water. Water system invention, bamboo reinforced, high density polyethylene drain, good for conduits. Filter cloth, perforated. These are drain systems, drainage and leaching. Filter with bamboo crosshatch melted in for snap fit. This is designing things like manhole covers out of plastics. And then pipe fittings. So for long systems over terrain, drains to cisterns and pump systems in the low areas, 2 to 3 foot diameter. These are small systems for plastic as opposed to steel. Water table drainage, when high, store the water. All right, here's something looks like kind of wild and crazy. Anytime I see blimp, then I'm gonna think people are gonna just kind of like get dizzy. So it's a water system, aircraft, blimp category, tripe. Blimp-based water conduit construction. Here's a blimp manufacturing a conduit. All right, water system. In-place water pipe expansion. You drain and you pump reservoirs before a rain, and then during the rain you have lots of fast water transfers with lots of water storage. So you can use wood, glass, or as I like to say, when I say wood, oftentimes I'm talking about, thank you, 5 minutes. Okay, oftentimes I'm talking about plasticized wood or hot molded wood. So when you think of wood, actually the wood pipes go back. Wood pipes are old in design, so it wouldn't be anything new. But the plasticization of wood changes the material quite a bit. You get wood that won't rot. It still has the wood properties. In fact, the wood properties are probably better. It's probably more like green wood. Okay, so when I say a wood pipe, I'm probably talking about plasticized wood. So, all right. So we're talking about drainage systems to large reservoirs. And this is pictured, a very large pipe here, which is a 40-foot diameter pipe with a road built on top of the pipe. And then you've got a flat on the bottom of the pipe, also using that as a road. And then you've got that on a support, because it couldn't follow grade. And then you've got two tripe system monorails on either side. So these would be for, let's say, a city conveying water to a reservoir close by, 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 miles, let's say, where you have two roads are built in to this system and two monorails. So killing two birds with one stone with a system like this that's my cup of tea right there. Systems like that. Because I've worked on the tripe system, road systems, monorail systems, water systems. It's where they all blend together. That's where your bang for the buck happens. Support yurt around mountain or hill. So that's a yurt around the top of a hill. Looks like a yurt, if you know what that is. That's for very, very high reservoirs. You've got windmills all around there, and you've got a place to store water that's very high up, and then you pipe that water on its own gravity, and it'll go for quite a while. Water system farm invention. Sapling double tank tubes. What is this? Sapling. Okay, I've used a lot of sapling. 2 minutes. Sapling double tank tubes. Now, plasticized wood can come in the form of raw wood, which is a sapling. So I've seen that as a possible material, the actual saplings or branches to be used as similar to the woven cane from Africa, building a tank. You spray or extrude using these plastics, and you could use these for sewage systems or an algae pond or something small near your home. You could probably fly it in with a blimp, and you're flying in all these systems with a blimp, because otherwise the cost is going to be tremendous. So you can step these tanks up a hill and have a stepped pump approach. Uno momento, 1 minute. Oh no, what am I going to talk about? I don't know. How about a barrel or tube with reverse lambs? Okay. Yeah, well, another country heard from, as they say. Well, folks, I think we all need a break here. Thank you very much. So this has been more about the water systems, and I want to get through my file. Some of this stuff might be good. So thanks for watching the Scannell Agenda on water systems. Thank you very much.